everybody, welcome back to our channel. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Blanca, and today is Wicked Wine Wednesdays,
where we talk about true crime and sample wines.
Today we'll be discussing the cold case of Julia Niswender.
So if you like wine and true crime,
don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
Before we dive in, I just want to remind you guys that us talking about the wines that we tried will come at the end of the video, so if you're interested in that, stay tuned. And I want to let you guys know that we will be posting every other Wednesday. So let's dive in. This case is back in Michigan again. I don't know how we keep coming up with these, but we send each other stories that we want to talk about, and then we find which one's like the most interesting, and somehow we end up back in Michigan.
Every time.
So the next one, we're gonna try to stray away from Michigan, I hope.
Let's hope.
We'll see.
We'll see.
It's not intentional.
It's really
maybe it is subconsciously, like I'm dragged to the Michigan ones.
Maybe.
Because I'm from Michigan. I don't know. This case isn't a joke, though. It is about a 23-year-old young woman named Julia Niswender. She was from Eastern Michigan. She went to Michigan University, and she was studying communications, theater, media. Her overall goal was to become a reporter for New York. Everybody described her as a fun-loving young woman. She loved life. She loved her friends and family. She had a goal to get married and have a huge family. She wanted a big family and dogs. And that was just her dream. And sadly, it was taken from her in December of 2012.
Julia was a very dedicated student. She also had a job at Walmart, and she also lived in an apartment down on Huron River Drive with a roommate that she had. It wasn't uncommon for her and her roommate to go, a couple days without seeing each other, especially being dedicated to their studies, their jobs, social lives, whatever, your typical roommate life. But the last time that her roommate had heard from her was on December 9th of 2012. Now, on December 10th, Julia's alarm clock did go off that morning. However, it wasn't uncommon for the alarm clock to go off and for Julia to just ignore it or, hit snooze or just let it run constantly. So her roommate actually attempted to go into the room but was unable to because the door was locked. So at first, her roommate didn't think too much of it. She was just kind of like, okay, whatever, like the door's locked, the alarm clock's going off, like whatever. Just leaves the apartment and goes on with her day. Now, at this point, Julia isn't attending any of her classes, which isn't like her. Mm-hmm. And now she's not attending her job at Walmart, which again, something completely out of her character. So at this point, her roommate does contact the authorities to basically just kind of do like a wellness check on her because she was concerned about her, especially with the door being locked, mm-hmm. Not having access to her. She's not answering. We don't know where she is. So, just your common, typical roommate, like what's happening, you know? On December 11th of 2012, the police entered Julia's apartment. They attempted to knock on her door, trying to do their wellness check, kind of see what's going on and what was happening. Unfortunately, again, there was no answer at the door. Eventually, they did get access through the master key and entered her door. However, what they found was not pretty.
What they ended up finding is Julia's body submerged face down into her bathtub, and the bathtub was full of water. Her arms were pulled behind her back and her feet were together. They found ligature marks on her wrists and her ankles, and her clothes have been cut off. Her yoga pants, her shirt, everything was cut off, and it was beside the bathtub laying on the floor. For some reason, her right sleeve was still connected, but everything else was off, leaving her body nude and exposed. The instrument that was used to cut off her clothes was never found. The marking, whatever was used to leave the markings on her body, the ligature marks, was never found. But they did find semen on her body that was consistent with a male who had a vasectomy.
Despite the gruesome scene that they came upon, the cause of her death was asphyxia. It was proven that she was deprived of oxygen before being placed into the bathtub where she eventually drowned. They did also find that her cell phone was underneath her belly, which was kind of weird, I guess, you know, to like make sure that it was like completely drowned and no evidence was found, maybe.
Maybe.
But they also didn't find really too many trauma wounds to her other than the ligature marks. There were 2 little abrasions above her left elbow. There was a bite mark on the right side of her tongue, which caused bleeding in her mouth, and from a deep contusion is what they kind of said it was causing it. They also ran toxicology reports on her after it, saying maybe that's kind of what helped her, like, be deprived of oxygen or, you know, anything like that. But the toxicology screen came back negative. So now you have somebody that has no wounds, dead, and on top of that, there's also no signs of, like, forced entry anywhere.
So like she had stated, there was no signs of forced entry at all. So whoever entered her apartment most likely knew her, and she most likely willingly let them into her apartment. And when they saw the scene, it seemed like somebody had made it seem like it was supposed to be a staged robbery. Like, there were drawers pulled out, her clothes were pulled out. It just seemed like somebody was looking for something, but not actually looking for something. And all of her valuables, like her laptop, her iPod, her phone, everything was still there, including wrapped Christmas presents that probably were of value. And those were all still there. They also think that a zebra-striped pillowcase was missing from the scene. They can't 100% confirm that, but they're pretty sure it was. They also found that her keys were missing from the apartment, which would explain why her bedroom door was locked, because whoever did it probably locked the bedroom door when they left. And her front door was locked. Her roommate said when she left that it wasn't open or anything, so they had left the apartment and also locked the door behind them. They also found a pair of white gloves that were tied together, and it had a dark substance in it. And when they investigated in it, it seemed to be Julia's blood.
Prior to Julia's murder, every time that she was on break from school, she would obviously return home like most college students do. However, it was overheard by Julia's grandma that she would never return back to that home, meaning like her home. It was said multiple times on occasions that she was uncomfortable staying at home when she returned home, that she would only stay at her grandma's house, and then her grandma had overheard her, you know, telling the sister again, you know, never staying in that house. It was never understood as to why she would never return to that house. Most people speculated because it was like a 2-bedroom home that was just maybe overly cramped at that point, that's why she didn't want to go back home. However, it's kind of weird that you would never want to return to that home instead of just saying like, oh, I don't want to go home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like that's a little odd. All related into her murder, there have been more than 100 people that have been interviewed, have been suspected. Search warrants have been sent out for who knows even how many people at this point. There's been over 1,000 man hours put into this case, and somehow it still completely remains unsolved. Now, back to those latex gloves that she was talking about earlier. They do not even coincide with any, like, DNA from anything in the scene. Like, it's just somebody completely random. So now detectives have kind of brought in the FBI at this point, I think, where they have like a behavioral analyst coming in, just kind of reviewing the whole case. And it's gotten to the point where their theory now is that obviously whoever did this, one, knew her. There's no way that they didn't know her. They took their time and they planted this whole plan out very, very carefully. Like we said, the ligature, like, bond thing was missing. The thing to cut the ligature was missing. We forgot to mention that her underwear was missing from the scene. Her car keys are missing or her house keys are missing from the scene. Like, just pretty much anything that could be of any, physical evidence is missing. But now you have random DNA. So it's gotten to the point where now they believe that, whoever did this planted somebody else's random DNA in the scene.
To throw them off.
Basically to throw them off. Yeah. So that way now you're super confused, you're running around in circles, and that's kind of what they did. Now, let's talk about her stepfather. His name is James Turnquist. He is the #1 suspect in her case. However, not arrested, nothing has happened.
So like she had stated, James, her stepfather, has been named the #1 suspect in the case, which only makes sense. But he seemed to always be very unemotional and composed. There was even a time where the detectives went to Julia's house to talk to her mom and her stepdad, and her mom was crying and obviously being very emotional about the whole situation, and James had told her to calm down, which detectives were like, that's kind of weird. And on top of that, he had a vasectomy after his first child, which coincides with the semen that was found on Julia's body. Not to mention, 2 days after she died, one of her friends had said that Julia told her that James had been sexually abusing her since she was a child. And she also said that he was always like really touchy with her, and it was just weird, like their dynamic was weird, and that he would call her his girlfriend, which is so weird. But she ended up saying that she didn't make those statements. She ended up taking it all back, that she never said it. But it's reported that she did. But they still don't know if it was him, and they keep him as a suspect.
Eventually, James was taken into custody and arrested. It was on terms of Julia's death. However, they found child pornography on his computer. They found 30 images of children, but they like to say underage women, on his computer. Now, eventually, he was released from custody and acquitted of all the charges. Why? Because it was his work laptop, and apparently anybody could have downloaded those images, and there's no proof that James did it. Sure. Eventually, in April of 2014, there were detectives obviously reviewing the case because this is something that they are ongoing with. They discovered that there was a purple rug in the scene with the next to the bathtub. So in all the crime scene photos, there's this purple rug, which they then later realized was never taken into evidence. So now they're kind of like, what's going on? Let's try and see if we can find this purple rug. Now, Julia's mom decided to let the police go through her storage unit where she kept all of Julia's belongings. So the purple rug probably would have been in there if the mom was collecting everything. Now, to this day, that purple rug is missing. But again, Julia's mom's probably not the only person with access to that storage unit. Coincidence? I think not.
There's a lot that seems to paint James in this innocent light. It's because he passed 2 polygraph tests, one that was administered privately and another one by the sheriff's county. And those are obviously a big thing that are like, oh, well, he's innocent. And also not to mention that his alibi was that he was in bed with his wife, who is Julia's mother. But there are reports that they were having marital issues and sleeping separately. So maybe she didn't have that close of an eye on him. And when they took the DNA sample that they found inside of the glove, it didn't match to him. So there's that. And when they took his DNA to match with the semen that was found on her body, it was too weak to be compared, which she has some info on that.
So I looked this up because I was genuinely curious about, well, like, I guess, like, semen. Not necessarily curious about semen. I guess that sounded wrong.
Vasectomy is holding enough DNA
there we
to
go.
be testable.
That's the best way to put it. So what I found out was this, and I Googled it, so you guys can probably just find the information as well, but whatever. It basically says that sperm have a high DNA concentration, which I guess it says, so this technique yields a lot of DNA to work with.
Mm-hmm.
But if no sperm are detected, then it's likely that the semen's author had a vasectomy, which is what they had found.
Mm-hmm.
And it says that the technicians can still extract DNA from non-sperm cells in semen, but they won't get as much.
Yeah. So
it's not completely impossible to rule him out from, you know, this whole thing. Unfortunately, it just seems like sperm would have been like the number one suspect in all of this.
Yeah, but too bad he had a vasectomy.
So unfortunately, we have nothing now.
Like, is he? Maybe he's. I don't want to say he's smart because he's an idiot. But is he smart enough to Google that and be like, oh well, they can't catch my DNA, you know, in my sperm. And then on top of that, they think that the gloves that had the DNA in it, that because he had owned a janitorial service. So they think that he just like picked up gloves from like the trash after a day's work and used those as a way of knowing that there would be somebody else's DNA in it, and it would send the police on a goose hunt, which is, yeah, that's what happened. And despite all of the information and the evidence that the police have, they don't have an official suspect or somebody that they are keeping a close eye on in order to arrest them. They don't really have any answers. So it's just...
Well, I hope they're keeping a close eye on him, because shoot,
I hope
if
so
like
too.
Everything is pointing to him, like I would want to be like on a freaking stakeout for him every night, waiting for him to mess up. Just waiting for him to mess up.
Yeah, but I guess they don't have enough evidence on him to do that, you know? So, yeah, I mean, it remains a cold case, and it's just so sad. She lost her life, and there's no answers. And to think that, I'm not putting this on her mom, but to think that her mom is still with the man that possibly murdered her daughter, she has no idea, is just sickening. Awful. Awful. What an awful person.
If I heard all of those things come out, like right after my daughter had died, about like someone molesting my daughter, about like the possibility of that, and then the fact that pretty much everything points at him. Yeah. I mean,
I would have been like, sorry, bye.
He would have been somebody that wouldn't have to force any entry. He would have easy access to dispose of all the evidence. Again, the janitorial job to throw off the police and send them on their goose hunt. I feel like he just had everything perfectly planned out, and I'm just wondering if she finally was just like fed up with being, you know, abused by him, and he decided that, you know,
if you're not gonna let me do it anymore, you're not coming back home, then I'm gonna kill you.
Basically. Which sucks.
Awful. So sad. But to end this video on a more positive note, we're going to talk about the wines that we tried and let you know what we think. So we actually didn't get 2 bottles this time. We got 1, and this is actually a Christmas gift from my friend Jessica, and she said that she thought it'd go pretty good with our show, and it's called The Criminal. And on the back it says, A Tale of Turmoil. It says, behind every criminal is a story of turmoil, but from the turmoil comes growth, similarly to a grapevine. Oh, a grapevine must go through struggles. Isn't that true? And then it says, not every trauma creates a criminal, but every crime can certainly grow from trauma. So, This wine is from
California, because
Sonoma County.
what isn't from California at this point?
Sonoma County's in California.
I think it might be like the Napa area. I might be wrong,
Yeah,
but
maybe.
it could be like the
From Dry Creek Valley.
so it could be like Central or it could be Napa.
Yeah. Oh, it definitely says Californian. Okay. North Coast. Yeah. It's a red blend, and again, it contains sulfates.
It's not a cab, you guys. We drank something together and it wasn't a cab.
See, I told you it'd get better. It is more on the bold side than the light side. It's more on the tannic side than the smooth side, which I guess I kind of get. It kind of tastes like acidy, you know?
It really does. I can see that. Yeah.
And it's more dry than sweet, which I enjoy.
Yeah.
And, oh, again, it's more on the acidic side than the soft side.
There you go.
So, yeah.
And it pairs very well with, drumroll everybody, again, any dinner that you want. If you want some beef, if you want some poultry, some lamb, some veal, try out the Criminal.
Yeah. I actually,
I don't know, you thought the first sip was pretty rough. How'd you feel after?
it still is. Like, I like it. Don't get me wrong. I like it. But it's like super, you know when you see like hot Cheetos
Mhm.
and you get that like swelling in the back of your jaw or like that stinging
I guess.
or like when you see something sour?
Mm.
And that happens every time I drink it. And I'm like, oh. And that's when you know it's like too rough. Yeah.
I did not get that at all.
No?
I actually really enjoyed it. It wasn't that bad.
That's good.
There were some takes where maybe it was like a little rough,
Mhm.
but I don't know. Overall, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. It's
I
not
guess-
bad.
I guess you could say I'm getting more into reds.
Yeah. Good.
She's like, finally,
yeah.
catching up.
I don't think it's too bad. No. I did though have a Chardonnay for New Year's, and I was like, this is awful.
You know, it's really funny what I've noticed, like what I really have thought upon in like the 20 seconds that we've been here.
What's that?
Is like how when we first started drinking, I would try like different alcoholic drinks, and you're like, come on, just drink beer with me. Like, it's fine. Like, we'll get off of it or whatever, you know. And then I got super into beer, and now you're all like, come on, let's get into wine. And you're like, I only drink red wines. And now I'm over here like, yeah, the red wine's fine. It completely is like, it's getting on my palate over here.
Yeah. Well, they're good. And they do the job. Like, I think this one is what, like 15?
Forever influencing my drink palate. But you know what? I'm in.
I think it's like 15.5% alcohol. Like, that's why I like and I enjoy drinking wine, because you can have a couple glasses and you're good, you know?
Yeah.
With beer, you have to have like 5, and you're like, oh, yeah, now I feel bloated.
Oh, that was always the worst part about it. I won't lie. I was
Yeah.
feeling bloated. But I do like the wine more now.
Mm-hmm. It's luxurious.
Also, I understand why moms drink wine. Because one, it does the job hell of a lot quicker.
Jab.
Jab. It does the jab.
And on top of that, like, it's like a calm.
Yeah, like
Like
you don't feel like
buzz.
a crazy, like, yeah, buzz. Like when you, yeah. I feel like it just like sneaks upon you, because then I feel like every time I get home after this, I'm like sitting there, I'm like, I'm definitely drunk.
Yeah, and then you're like,
that.
and I'm going to bed.
For the record, I don't drive home.
Yeah,
My
no,
husband
her
drives me
husband
home.
does. Yeah, and I'm already home, so we're good. No, don't drink and drive.
Thank you everybody for watching, and we can't wait to see you next Wednesday. Bye!